keeping interest rates unchanged. This is the fifth time in a row the Fed has decided to keep a pause in place. President Trump has been heavily pressuring the chair of the central bank to cut interest rates because, in the president's view, that would boost the economy.
Meantime, the Commerce Department reported America's gross domestic product, or GDP, grew 3% in the second quarter. This is a rebound from the first quarter when we saw the U.S. economy shrink 0.5%. Economists say the whiplash can be attributed to the back and forth over tariffs. Imports dropped dramatically in this most recent quarter after surging earlier this year. So let's bring in NBC News senior policy reporter Shannon Pettypiece and NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake. Shannon, let's start with you here in studio. We know Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke not long ago about this interest rate decision. Between his remarks and these new GDP numbers or data, what should we make for the economy?
Yeah, so the message that he is giving is basically things are looking pretty stable right now. They're looking stable in the labor market, so he doesn't see a big need to cut rates. So let's say the labor market wasn't doing well, unemployment was ticking up, then you could make the case, oh, we need to lower rates, we need to do something to give a little juice to the economy. He's saying right now the labor market looks okay. Inflation, though, they still see a little bit of concern about that, and there's added concern about what these additional tariffs could do and whether we're actually seeing the effect of tariffs so far yet, or if companies are still sort of burning down inventory that they built up, whether the full effect of the tariffs so far have hit, and what could happen for the next wave of tariffs. So there's sort of an indication that they're going to wait and see again, look at some more labor numbers that are going to come out over the next coming months, look at some more inflation reports, and reassess at their next meeting in September.
Garrett, let me bring you in. So this is not what the president wanted. He's made that very clear. What's the reaction at the White House?
Well, we heard from the president moments before this announcement came out, with the president saying he anticipated that this is what the Fed would do and essentially leave rates unchanged. He's been complaining about this, broadly speaking, for some time. Today, his complaint was focused on the idea that high interest rates will continue to make it hard for particularly first-time homebuyers to get and pay for a mortgage. But I think you saw perhaps a glimmer of hope for the president that in this case you had two of the Fed's governors vote to dissent essentially with this decision to leave rates unchanged. I don't anticipate this pressure campaign letting up by the president anytime soon.
And Garrett, let's talk about tariffs. Speaking of pressure, the president said he is not changing his self-imposed deadline this Friday, August 1st. That would raise rates on most countries. But he also said today that the U.S. is still negotiating with trading partners, right? So how firm is this Friday deadline really?
It's about as firm as the deadlines I give my children when I say that we're not going to read any more stories at bedtime before promptly reading additional stories at bedtime. Ladies, look, I think every time the president has set a deadline like this, he's blown past it. His Treasury Secretary has told the markets not to panic, that the president's always willing to listen to additional offers. I don't think that there's anything special about this August 1st deadline other than that when these tariffs will go into effect while negotiations continue.
Shannon, speaking of tariffs, I know Powell addressed that directly in his speech moments ago. What did he have to say?
I mean, he said that it's possible that it's going to take longer to fill these effects from the tariffs that we thought. And we're going to get some earnings out coming in the next few weeks here, which could give some additional indications. But because of just the instability, as Garrett was mentioning, of these deadlines that come, they go away. Are they going to happen? Aren't they going to happen? What's the effective tariff rate going to be at the end of the day? It's just making it so difficult for businesses to be able to plan longer term. And we've seen some drop off in sort of business spending, and it's kind of unclear if that's because of concerns about tariffs, because of concerns about the overall economy. But as long as that uncertainty remains out there, where companies don't know what their tariff rate's going to be on imports from India, for example, or Europe or China, or dozens of other countries out there, we're just not going to know where the economy is going to land.
All right, Shannon Pettypiece, Garrett Haake, thank you both so much.
We are keeping a close eye on the West Coast today. Tsunami alerts have now been downgraded after one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded triggered tsunami waves across the Pacific.
But officials are still urging people along the coastline to be on alert. The powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off Russia's far east coast last night, causing cliffs to collapse into the water. And take a look at this. Tremors were also caught on camera while doctors in Russia were in the middle of an operation. Incredible video shows those surgeons hovering offering to protect their patient.
In Japan, nearly 2 million people were evacuated over tsunami concerns, with some of them waiting on their roofs for the all clear. In the U.S., tsunami waves reached all the way to Hawaii, California, Washington State, the tallest wave measuring over 5 feet. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson is following the latest for us in Santa Monica, California. Steve, we mentioned that the warnings, I believe, have been lifted along the coastline, but there are still concerns about currents on the beach, right?
Warnings lifted, but advisories still in place. Those currents could still be dangerous. And you have to keep in mind the basic oceanography, seismology of an event like this. A tsunami is not an event with just one salvo of waves, right? This is an elongated period of maybe the next 24 hours where there still is some practical danger. And then when you're talking about an earthquake, of course, there's always aftershocks. If you've got a 5.0 earthquake, you're not really worried about a 2.0 aftershock triggering another tsunami or extending sort of the event that we're in. When you're talking about 8.8, we've already seen aftershocks that number upwards of 6.0, and there have been over 100 of them. So this event continues, of course, and then of course when you're talking about the riptides, the currents, they're all affected by this tsunami event. So officials telling people stay away from the water if you can, especially there in Hawaii. The governor addressing that situation, talking about just how far you should be away. Here's what he said.
People ask if there was a generic way to describe how far you have to get away from the shoreline. To be absolutely safe, it's at least 4,000 feet. That's the better part, that's 4/5 of a mile, basically.
So again, fair to say that the major bullet was dodged here, but again, the event still persists. We did see, again, those waves in places, the 5.7 in Maui there, and then in other places, scattered damage, scattered injuries, nothing really serious. Yeah. But again, officials warning, it's not over. Okay?
And to that end, Steve, it's not lost on us that there are people in the water right now behind you. Is there any indication of when emergency officials will truly give the all clear here?
No indication, and I think they're doing that out of an abundance of caution. Of course, again, this event is usually something that typically lasts the next 24 hours or so you could see the tide come in very seriously. You could see those rip currents. And they're just telling people, you don't have to stay off the beach at this point necessarily, obviously, but when you're here, be careful, stay vigilant.
Yeah. Guys. All right, Steve Patterson, thanks so much.